How's it going, everybody? Feats are always a hotly debated topic, and I'm sure everyone who watches this has at least once complained about a feat. And I think there's no denying that feat balance is, without a doubt, something that needs to be worked on. We have extremely bad feats you pretty much never see, and if you see someone pick them, they're either trolling or haven't unlocked the remaining ones. And on the other hand, you have feats that are pretty much mandatory, best in slot, and sometimes even outright banned in tournament play. Yet, most of these complaints are either on a superficial level and pretty much just reflect what people feel is wrong with the feat. To my knowledge, no one has bothered to actually take a closer look at a lot of them. I used the same but different in the thumbnail as it fits perfectly here. We have specific feats that are widely available for many different characters. Examples here are Second Wind, Sharpened Blade, or Fear itself. And then we also have faction specific feats. Well, at least that has been a thing for the release and the Year 1 DLC heroes. When the Wulin released, Ubisoft shifted more towards unique feats for every specific character, and then just randomly threw in the rest from the available pool. That's probably just a small shift in their design choice, and I'm sure everyone enjoys having these unique feats only available on one character. And no, this wasn't sarcasm. But my point was that we had clear Knight, clear Viking, and clear Samurai feats that only characters from that faction had access to. For Knights we have the bombs, catapult, Vikings have traps, fury and fire flask, and the Samurai have smoke bomb, kiai, and arrow storm. I'm sure I've forgotten one, but that's beside the point. So, we know multiple characters have access to the same feat, and for the most part we can tell that these pretty much work the same on all of them. Or do they? That's what we're trying to find out today, just to calm everyone down at the beginning. There isn't a feat that works differently, they all do the same thing. But where we can find the differences is in activation, overall animation length, and thus the resulting recovery of it. You will notice that I'm only going to give you one recovery value. Unlike normal moves, feat usage pretty much works exactly like an execution. You're locked into the animation until the very end, and once done, you're being put back into neutral, which makes all your recoveries the same. Guard, dodge, and GB should all be the same. Disclaimer here. Guard change and dodge, I tested for all of them, and GB on some, but all were exactly the same for each move. I tried cutting down on the mind-numbing work here. So, if you think that something's off on a specific feat, on a specific character, please let me know and we'll obviously look into it. But my current conclusion is that there is only one recovery value, which covers all three types that we usually take into consideration. Another thing, a lot of feats can be used out of lock and be manually aimed. This changes a few things. I also got weird recovery values on some of the moves, but I want to look into this more in another video, as it would only bloat this one. I reckon feat usage retains out of lock status, but I haven't tested just yet. Like I said, I'll explain what this means in a future video should my hunch turn out to be correct. Okay, we're almost done with the introduction. This video will not include traps, as we know these values already and I covered this in depth in my trap guide. There have been changes specifically to placement and hiding them in the environment, but I'd still recommend it if you're not aware of how powerful a group of feats they are. But enough of this, let's get to it. I will not just list you numbers here, but focus on the outliers in each group. The recovery values I'm sure will be added to the info eventually, so just be patient there if you actually want to see them all. I will also try and give an explanation in some of the cases where personal experience clashes with the actual number. We are starting with Second Wind, the feat that is currently regarded as the strongest in the game. And there are currently two outliers when it comes to recovery, and those are Nobushi and Jeongjun. For Nobu this was a pretty well known thing already, but I guess it's nice to have the actual number. The normal recovery after Shroggin is 700 ms, for Nobu it's 1100 ms. Reason for this is that she retained her old Blissful Rest animation. In case anyone's unfamiliar with it, Nobushi used to have a completely different feat. In Season 1, Second Wind used to have multiple charges but only heal for a small amount. Nobu's feat was the other way around. One use only, yet a powerful heal over time that healed, I guess, around 150 HP. I'm not sure on the number. When Ubisoft removed that feat, the animation just got adopted and slapped on Second Wind. So instead of shrugging like all the other characters, she does this weird pose. Why JJ is so bad? I don't know, probably just a random design choice from the guy that was in charge of creating him. At least they stuck with the same type of animations, so it makes sense. Doom Banner follows a similar approach. The one Wulin hero, in this case Tiandi, is the outlier. Deploy time of the banner is 966 with a recovery time of 2 seconds. For Black Prior and Zerkia this is different. They take longer to place the banner, that's 1166 ms, but do have an overall shorter recovery with only 1800 milliseconds. Let's move on to the other banner. Friendship banner is way more prevalent in the current meta and you see plenty of them from many different characters. And before testing, I would have sworn that the time to place it is different for many characters. Well, turns out that deploying the banner is exactly the same for every character. It takes 933 ms to plant your flag. Kensei was the character that I would have bet that he is slower than the rest. My explanation here is the following. Kensei finishes his animation way before the others. He finishes before the effect even happens. This is not the case with the rest. Theirs more or less syncs up with the effect of the feat itself. This might be the reason why we perceive Kensei's to take longer, as it makes no sense that it's out of sync. In terms of recovery, it's 2 full seconds for everyone but Nobushi and Raider. Nobushi has 1500 ms and Raider 1800 ms. I guess Nobu got her compensation here after being shafted with Second Wind. Next up, Fury itself. The activation time is exactly the same on all of them. It always takes 600 ms to activate. Recovery values are slightly different. PK and Zerka have the fastest with 1200 ms and Hito and Glatt the slowest with 1400, while Orochi sits in the middle with 1300 ms. Exciting stuff. Okay, I said I won't include throwables because a lot of them are out of luck, but Fire Flask actually gave me consistent values, unlike bombs, Outer Storm, Catapult and so on. We basically have 3 different recovery values here. Slowest is Haaland and Raider, both taking 1700 ms to get back to neutral. Shaman sits in the middle at 1200 ms, and Valk and Warlord only take a second to recover. For a tier 4, this is quite the quick recovery actually, which is a bit surprising I think. Fury is next. This is one of the few feats where activation time is also different, and not just the recovery. We're looking at 400 ms for Raider, Valk and Warlord, whereas Shaman and Zerg take 500 ms. Recovery is also longer in Shaman and Zerg, and funnily enough Valkyrie with 800 ms, compared to the 700 ms for the others. Inspire was a welcome change. Both activation as well as recovery were absolutely identical among all characters that have it. I will exclude the rest of these buffs like Battle Cry, Morale Boost, Scout and so on. Their values are actually consistent throughout. Juggernaut activates at 500 ms for the whole cast. The one recovery I want to point out is Lawbringers. A character that actually uses the feat has a little bit more than half the recovery than the others. Lawbringer sits at 600 ms recovery, whereas all the others take 1100 to 1300 ms. That's quite the outlier if you ask me, and I don't quite understand why it's even there. Another feat I want to point out is Sharpened Blade. For this feat, the recovery values on all heroes are the exact same, clocking in at 1500 ms. But what is different is the time when the feat activates. The numbers are on the screen, I don't need to read them out loud. Issue here is that 1.5 seconds of overall animation is pretty long, and getting hit out of it, if out of position, is not all that rare. So if your character has a long activation time, this can mean that the effect hasn't been applied yet. Granted, it's not a very commonly used feat, but I'd still prefer if we see these windows standardized, or at the very least narrowed down a bit. Taking more than twice as long on the very same feat seems kind of bad. Now for Smoke Bomb, all values, both activation and recovery, are exactly the same. 800 ms activation and 900 ms recovery. This will come as a surprise to many. Well, it did for me at least, as I thought there were some clearly faster animations. And yes, animations are faster on some, but the effect always starts at the same time. So there might have been a time when Ubisoft standardized this feat but kept the animations the same, because if you look close enough you can see that they do not sync up perfectly. Mind you, this is absolutely not an issue, but that is probably one of the reasons why we perceive some of them to be slower or faster respectively. And the last feat, good old Longbow. We already know that there are insane differences between them. Numbers on the screen again. What I want to point out here is that both ends of the spectrum here have an advantage, whereas the one occupying the middle really doesn't. With that I mean how easy it is to dodge. The fast one requires fast reactions. Well, pretty much only Gokis. But the slower the animation is, the worse it is to dodge early, because then it can happen that you dodged so early that the feat will still track you, but you didn't dodge early enough so it can dodge a second time. This requires you to be very aware of who you're currently fighting. Awareness, something that is extremely lacking in some players. But yeah, recovery is a minimum of 2 seconds, so be prepared to punish people for using it in the middle of teamfights. And we're done. This video got longer and longer, so I already cut out a few things, and like I said, we will take a closer look at the difference between in-lock and out-of-lock feat usage in a future video. But feel free to let me know what you think on this matter in general. Should identical feats also be identical in terms of usage? Or does it make sense that some characters are simply better at it than others? Because as it is right now, there's no rhyme, no reason to it. It's not class based, it's pretty much completely random, whether you're good or bad at using your feat. I've been accused of wanting a lot of standardization, and while it's true that I push towards it in a lot of cases, it can obviously lead to less interesting interactions and remove depth, if you want to call it that, in some cases. Having said that, I hope the video was helpful. Thanks for watching. Laters everybody.